Yes, I know my wrap up is late, but I was finishing the term for school. That's my excuse. And ignore that I'm now going to say that I read the most books I've ever read in a month in November. Just ignore the contradiction between lack of time and reading 13 books in a month. I actually didn't read an insane amount of pages. I just read way shorter books than I normally do. I have caught my reading goal. Let's get into it. Okay, November. I read 13 books, which is a lot, and it was around 4,400 pages. So average book length was only around 330 pages, which for me is really short. I was at like 600 and something average pages going into this month. So I almost halved my average book length, which is why I read 13 books. Quality-wise, it was a little bit up and down. There were some books I really liked for this month, one of them being a reread, though. There was also some sketchy books. Average rating was around 7.3, which I'm usually pretty good at finding books I really like, so even though a 7.3 would be a book I enjoyed, that is generally slightly lower than I would normally expect. I started off by reading Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, which is, for those of you who don't know, a YA quartet. Book 3 just came out, and I haven't read book 3 yet. But this was one of his few works that is both that I haven't read, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It definitely is a YA story, and it feels like a YA story, and Spencer is a YA protagonist. I still just really enjoy Brandon's writing. I think Skyward is a little bit more basic of a plot than Starsight, which I'll also talk about now, even though I read later in the month. But I enjoyed Skyward more because I think I just preferred the cast of characters. I think Brandon is very good at having his side characters make decisions that feel like realistic to a person. He's not so much like... Some people criticize his dialogue, that sometimes they say, like, the side characters, like, their dialogue doesn't feel as real, and that might be true. I think dialogue is one of his relative weaknesses, but I think the decisions that his side characters make feel like the decisions that actual people would make, and he was able to craft a side cast that has, I think, a pretty good amount of depth in a pretty short first-person novel. And then Starsight was definitely a lot more ambitious. It went in a direction that I'm guessing people did not expect it to, and it was slightly controversial, I'm assuming, to go in that direction. People were kind of expecting more of the same, and what you got was a pretty significant change in, like, primary conflict and what type of story it is. I enjoyed Skyward as well. I enjoyed Starsight as well. I did like Skyward more. I gave Skyward like an 8.5, and I gave Starsight an 8.1, so I did really enjoy both. I just did prefer the cast of characters explored in Skyward. The ending, like the Sanderlanche of Starsight, was probably a little bit more unique. I'm not really sure what I feel about some aspects of it. Some aspects of it I thought were really good. There were some aspects of it that were kind of just like, huh, okay. But yeah, that was the Sanderson I read in the month of November. Overall, like, I wasn't expecting, Skyward to be as good as, like, Stormlight, so I got about what I was expecting. I'll take 8.5 and 8.1. Let's move on to what I spent the most time reading, which was the Book of Earthsea. And no, this is not one book. This is 6 books, which I still read quite a few books, even if you did count this as one book. But the Book of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin, a classic of the genre, and I think the first 2 of these are considered YA, although it kind of says in the afterword, like, the publisher told Ursula K. Le Guin, like, yeah, write this for YA, and she was like, well, teenagers are YA. Maybe we don't give teenagers enough credit. I'll just write it like I would for an adult, but just make the primary plot, like, a primary story being someone kind of coming of age. I would describe this, if you have read Kingkiller, imagine if Koth learned from his mistakes, and it was much shorter. That's the Wizard of Earthsea. I actually think that it was probably... I know Rothfuss is a huge fan of Wizard of Earthsea. I actually feel like either consciously or subconsciously, Rothfuss read this and was like, I feel like this guy would just make the same mistakes more often, and then change a bunch of stuff stylistically, obviously, because it's way longer, and that's how he came up with Kingkiller. Obviously, a lot of other stuff, not only that. Anyways, I think The start of Earthsea, I wasn't super sold on. It was almost so fast that it felt slow, where it covered so much ground in like 2 or 3 chapters that it felt like I couldn't really dig into any of it, and I was a little bit worried. But then it started to kind of get more focus on what Ged is doing, like day to day, and kind of school time was over, and I really enjoyed the second half of this book. I think Ursula K. Le Guin did a really good job of making Ged a unique, compelling, and dynamic protagonist, had good side characters. Obviously, Ursula K.'s writing is very excellent. It wouldn't quite be in like my S tier authors. I think people point out she's very good at kind of having the people sound more archaic. She doesn't use like modern language as much in dialogue, which some people really care about. I don't that much. But overall, I did enjoy all the stuff I read in here. My favorite would be the Tomes of Atawon, which was the second book, although it'd be very close to it with Tihanu. Tihanu, I think, started the strongest, and was maybe Tomes of Atawon was the most unique. In general, I like there's kind of 2 main protagonists. I like the Tanar stories more than the Ged stories. Tomes of Atawon got there's quite a bit of a darker premise than The Wizard of Earthsea, and I think it was more unique. And I think in general what this book does is just kind of like the sense of wonder. It's very good at capturing. And then there was also an anthology, which was like a collection of short stories. I was actually pretty mixed on the anthology. It was my least favorite section. There was one of the stories in the anthology that I loved, and I think might be my favorite Earthsea stuff. But then there was also like a romance that is both not my genre, and it just felt like the most typical romance like you could create. I just feel like it did nothing new. Anyways, my scores for these, I'm not going to list out them all because I can't remember them all that easily. They varied from like 6 from the Tales of Earthsea, and most of them were in the high 7s or low 8s. I'm not going to say I absolutely loved any of them or was an all-time favorite, but overall I very much enjoyed reading Earthsea. And I read at the same time, I read Dune Messiah, which I really like. Dune, the first novel. I am unfortunately not going to be in the camp that likes the sequels as much as the main novels, it appears. I didn't dislike this, but I just didn't enjoy it very much. It felt like there were some really cool ideas. There were also just some plot lines where I was just like, what the hell are you doing here, Frank Herbert? There's stuff with Alia and like Hots. I forget his name. It starts with an H. You know who I mean. He has another name. It's the character that has 2 names. I'm not going to say his second name for spoilers. What the hell was going on in that plot line? I think I may have enjoyed this more if I'd seen people talk about Dune less, because I think some of the ideas it explored that reflected on Dune itself may have been more interesting if I didn't see them coming as much, but that I'd kind of already knew that this was going to explore that more and what direction it was going in, I think made me enjoy it less. I gave this like a 5.4 out of 10. It felt like it had some scenes where I was like, this feels like I'm enjoying it like as much as the original Dune. I think what Frank Herbert, maybe his best skill, is not dialogue itself, but like the framing of dialogue, where he goes first person omniscient, or third person omniscient, not first person omniscient. That would be extremely weird. Third person omniscient and hops between heads. And it's just the way he does it, I think, makes some of his like conversations stand out and you focus on the more important stuff. So I'm glad I don't think his dialogue would fit that well if he was just this person said, and just like let the dialogue itself do it. I think how he frames dialogue adds a lot to the story, adds a lot of the depth to the conversations and politics. But I just didn't enjoy reading it that much. Anyways, I also continued with the Fiona of our Tapestries with The Wandering Fire, with its extremely cheesy cover, but it's a somewhat cheesy classical fantasy book. I've now finished Fiona of Our as I'm recording this. The Wandering Fire is my favorite of Fiona of Our. I actually really enjoyed The Wandering Fire. I don't think it quite hit the highs of The Summer Tree, but I enjoyed it throughout. That being said, it definitely has a section in the middle where I'm just like, again, like, where the hell do you come up with this stuff, Guy Gavriel, okay? But, like a lot of Guy Gavriel K books, I love the start. I said in my Goodreads review and maybe in my wrap-up for The Summer Tree that there was a thing at the end of The Summer Tree, and just depending on how it was handled, like if it was just glossed over, I might lower my rating for the Summer Tree in hindsight, but it was handled amazingly. And it was really, really well done in my opinion. And then the ending of this book leaned more into like the Arthurian legends, and I actually feel like for this and The Darkest Road, I maybe would have enjoyed them more if I was more familiar with some of like the legends and stuff that it got from, which I think maybe is a balance that Guy Gavriel Kay struck better in his future work. So I feel like I'm able to enjoy The Lions of Al-Rasan just as much, despite knowing very little about the time period, like the setting that it's based on. But I think also Guy Gavriel Kay noticeably improved as a writer. He's one of my favorite prose writers. He just makes everything seem more important than it would be if other people wrote it. I don't know how to describe this, but I give this a 9.1 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. The Guy Gavriel Kay 5-star strumpet continued. And then I reread Assassin's Apprentice with the gorgeous illustrated editions that I picked up, and I have a video about why I like this so much more in reread. I liked Assassin's Apprentice the first time around, but I loved Assassin's Apprentice this time around. I think it's two main factors. One, it's just a better book on reread. There are things you can pick up that you couldn't before. In general, Hobb books aren't exactly like designed to be like page turners, so I feel like you actually I'm expecting to like the series even more the second time around, because usually what you lose on reread is you lose like, I need to find out what happens next, and what you gain is a greater understanding of like the character motivations and the situations and everything going on, and I think that's going to be an excellent trade-off for the entire series. Some of the foreshadowing this is amazing. Anyways, if you want to know more why I liked it, I have a video about it. And next, I read Gideon the Ninth, which means I get to throw this book again. I've now thrown this book multiple times, and I'm annoyed by it in like how good shape it's still in. Like, what the hell? Why are you so durable? When I drop a book accidentally that I like, it's just like instantly destroyed. I don't know. Anyways, I just like this book a lot. I also have a review for it. Reading it made me sad. Not sad as in like, oh, this is emotionally impactful. Sad as in like, why am I reading this? There are kind of two different types of one-star reviews. There are one-star reviews where it's like, I just really didn't enjoy reading this, and there are one-star reviews that are like, this is offensive to fiction. This is not offensive to fiction. I don't think Tamsin Muir is like a hack writer or anything. I just didn't enjoy reading it all. Let's hope it got damaged that time. And last of all, I read The Lesser Devil by Christopher Rocchio, which is his short story following Hadrian's brother. This was definitely not what I expected it to be. I did not expect it to be as French as it was. I enjoyed this. I don't think I enjoy it nearly as much as I do the main novels. It's still extremely well written. I think I prefer Hadrian's voice in general. Crispin is just doesn't think about things as much. And I really love the way, Hadrian is one of my favorite protagonists in the genre. Crispin is not. So I think he is the lesser devil, both from a how important he is to the world perspective, and from a how good he is as a character perspective. Rocchio is still a fantastic writer. A really fantastic writer. But this, to me, was not compelling as any of the three main novels. I still enjoyed it. I just love all three of the main novels. I'd give this like a 7.6 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10, 3.5 stars, whatever you want to call it. Like a B- or a C+, one of those. Whatever system you want to use. Anyways, so that is the month of November. A month that, in terms of quantity, was fantastic. I've been behind my reading goal this entire damn year because I started with 4 Malazan Book of the Fallen books. God damn it, Erickson, why are your books so long and so dense? I'm not actually complaining. I like long and dense books. But anyways, I have caught my reading goal. Yay! I'm actually ahead of it now. So, overall, it was an enjoyable month of reading. It was primarily older stuff, except for Skyward, Starsight, and The Lesser Devil, I guess. But there was quite a few stuff from like the 80s and before the 80s. Also, I forgot to talk about for Earthsea, for how it wrapped up. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil anything. I think the final book, as a book, is not the strongest Earthsea book, but I think the ending of the book, like how things actually wrap up, is extremely fitting to the story we got. So, those are the books I read in the month of November. Let me know what you read in November. Let me know if you've read any of the stuff I did, and what you thought of it. Have a nice day, everyone.